Chapter 1. The Sizzle Before the Betrayal. The sun hung low, casting an amber glow over the Caldwell backyard, painting long shadows across the manicured lawn. The scent of charcoal and sizzling meat mingled with the faint aroma of freshly mowed grass. Derek Caldwell stood at the grill, tongs in one hand, a towel draped over his shoulder. His faded gray t-shirt was soaked at the collar, and his brow glistened with sweat. But he smiled through it, because it was for Tyler. Tyler was turning 10, and Derek had promised him a backyard barbecue with all his favorites, steaks, burgers, and Dad's famous honey garlic wings. It was supposed to be a day of joy, a celebration, a reminder that, no matter how hectic life got, family came first. "Derek, you really know your way around a grill," came a voice from across the patio. It was Robert Ashford, Linda's father. Wealthy, influential, and arrogant in that old money way. He wore a linen blazer over a baby blue shirt and held a glass of scotch like he was at a country club function rather than his grandson's birthday. Derek offered a polite nod. Years of trial and error. The trick's in the timing. Robert chuckled without humor. "Well, I'll take medium rare, if that's not too much trouble." "It's already on the grill," Derek replied, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. Around him, the party buzzed. Linda's mother, Patricia, was seated at the umbrella-shaded table, chatting with the wives of Robert's business partners. They all wore too much perfume and talked like they were hosting a charity gala. Derek's daughter, Maya, 14 and already inheriting her mother's poise, stood near the cooler texting on her phone, uninterested in the festivities. Tyler darted between cousins, holding a water balloon and screaming with laughter. Linda, Derek's wife of 16 years, wore a white summer dress and a subtle smirk that never reached her eyes anymore. She moved among her family like a hostess auditioning for a reality show, graceful, curated, detached. Derek flipped a steak, watching the juices bubble and hiss against the hot metal. He was proud of what he'd built. Caldwell Steel had started in his garage 15 years ago and now employed over 120 workers across 3 states. He'd poured his soul into the business and into his family. "Hey, babe," Linda called sweetly, walking up beside him with a practiced smile. "Can you grab a steak sauce? I think Tyler wants it for his burger." Derek nodded. "Sure, it's in the kitchen." He stepped away from the grill, wiping his hands on the towel, and pushed open the sliding door. The cool air of the kitchen washed over him, a brief reprieve from the summer heat. He walked toward the fridge, scanning for the A1 bottle, when a hushed conversation caught his ear, coming from the formal dining room just around the corner. He paused. "He's a good cook. I'll give him that," Robert's voice said, laced with condescension. "But that man is a deadweight. You need to leave him before he drags us all down." Derek froze. His hand hovered over the refrigerator door handle. His pulse quickened. Linda's voice followed, calm and almost bored. "Don't worry, Dad. The lawyer is filing Monday. He says we can take half of his company, too." There was silence. Deafening. Cold. Derek's stomach dropped. For a second, the kitchen swayed beneath him. He blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly, if maybe his mind had played a cruel trick. But the voices didn't lie. Their words echoed, each syllable digging into his gut like a blade. Half of his company, filing Monday. He gripped the edge of the countertop to steady himself. The woman he'd built a life with, shared late-night dreams and early morning coffees with, was conspiring to dismantle everything he had created. Not just his heart, his legacy. And she was doing it with her father, the man who had never hidden his contempt. A breath, then another. Derek straightened up slowly, his mind racing, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at him to burst into that room, demand answers, rage and curse, and throw something through a window. But instead, he inhaled deeply through his nose, then exhaled. He opened the fridge, found the steak sauce, closed it. He waited a few seconds to make it seem like he hadn't heard a thing. The way he did when he'd overheard Maya's first awkward phone call with a boy last year. Pretend ignorance to preserve illusion. But this wasn't illusion. This was war. As he stepped back outside, the sun had dipped even lower. Shadows stretched like claws across the yard. The chatter resumed. Laughter floated through the air again, but to Derek, It all sounded tinny and hollow, like a soundtrack to a movie he was no longer a part of. Robert glanced at him from across the patio and raised his glass with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Linda stood beside him, laughing at something Patricia said, perfectly posed, perfectly false. Derek walked back to the grill, the bottle of steak sauce in hand. The meat was nearly done. He flipped a ribeye, checked a burger, and brushed on some marinade. The smell was intoxicating, rich and savory. A moment ago, he was a father grilling steaks for his son's birthday. Now, he was a man betrayed. But none of them would know, not yet. "Smells amazing, Derek," someone called. He turned to see one of Robert's business associates, some finance guy with a pink polo and teeth too white to be real. Derek smiled. Wide, warm, the kind of smile that made people believe everything was fine. "Steaks are just about ready," he said cheerfully. "Hope everyone brought an appetite." He plated the ribeyes with practiced hands, arranging them with care. The tongs clicked like castanets in his grip. Every movement deliberate, controlled, mechanical. He served Robert first. "Medium rare, right?" Derek asked with a smile. Robert nodded, taking the plate. "Perfect." Derek turned to Linda next. He handed her a plate with the thickest cut of meat, garnished with parsley and a hint of char. "Hope it's to your liking," he said softly. Linda looked at him briefly, surprised at his tone, but said nothing. She smiled politely. Derek stood there a moment longer, surveying the scene. The boy he loved was laughing by the pool. His daughter stared into her phone. His wife and her family dined on food he had prepared with care and pride. And none of them knew. They had declared war in whispers, thinking he was blind. But now he knew, and he would not confront them. Not today. He would serve them smiles. And steaks. Chapter 2. Still waters, deep strategy. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Derek Caldwell sat alone in the living room, long after the last guest had left and the echo of laughter had faded into distant memory. The only sound was the soft, steady hum of the air conditioning and the occasional creak of the old hardwood floor beneath his feet. Outside, the backyard still smelled faintly of smoke and grilled meat, a reminder of the perfect illusion he had maintained just hours earlier. But inside, Derek was a man unraveling. He sat hunched forward on the edge of the couch, hands clasped together, eyes unfocused. Tyler's balloons bobbed lazily from the ceiling, casting shadows that danced like ghosts in the dim lamplight. Empty wine glasses sat forgotten on the coffee table. Somewhere upstairs, Linda slept soundly in their bed, oblivious, or worse, completely confident in what she believed would be a clean break. Derek ran a hand over his face. He hadn't spoken since the party ended. Not to Linda, not to the kids, not even to himself. But the silence wasn't empty. It was sharp, focused. He replayed every word he'd overheard in the kitchen earlier. "He's a good cook, but this man is a deadweight. The lawyer is filing Monday. He says we can take half of his company too." The words had taken root and twisted something inside him, something that used to be soft and trusting, something that wouldn't return. He stood, walked into his office, and shut the door quietly behind him. It was a modest space, clean, minimal. His desk was oak, polished to a dull sheen. Framed photos lined the bookshelf. One of Tyler riding a bike for the first time, another of Maya at her spelling bee, Derek's proud arm around her shoulders. At the center of it all was a picture from 10 years ago, Derek and Linda holding newborn Tyler in the hospital room, both smiling like they had forever ahead of them. He stared at that photo for a long time. Then, without hesitation, he opened the bottom drawer of his desk and pulled out a thin black binder. It was labeled Contingency. He'd created it 3 years ago, during a late night of paranoia after hearing about a friend whose ex-wife had gutted his business in court. He had brushed off the fear at the time, thought he'd never need it. Linda had always been practical, even supportive of his ambitions. But now he was grateful for the instinct. The binder contained copies of corporate documents, signed contracts, ownership breakdowns, and passwords, everything he'd need to protect himself if things ever turned hostile. Derek flipped through the pages slowly, his mind settling into an icy rhythm. This wasn't rage. This was clarity. By the time dawn crept across the sky and painted the blinds with gold, He had memorized every clause and hidden asset in his company structure. Monday came. Derek dressed in a navy polo and jeans. Just another normal day, at least from the outside. Linda was in the kitchen sipping coffee and scrolling her phone. "Morning," she said casually, not looking up. "Morning," Derek replied evenly. She was good, cold as polished stone. Not a trace of guilt on her face. Not even a flicker of anxiety. She was betting on his ignorance. Or maybe his passivity. Either way, he wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. He kissed Tyler on the head, nodded to Maya as she left for school, and headed for his truck. But instead of driving to Caldwell Steele's main office, he pulled into the lot of a small building on the outskirts of town. The lettering on the frosted glass door read, "Franklin Investigations, discretion guaranteed." A man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes met him in the waiting area. "Mr. Caldwell," the man said, standing. "I'm Nate Franklin. You asked for the best. I'm assuming this isn't a social visit." Derek shook his hand firmly. "I need proof. I need everything. Phone records, location logs, surveillance, photos, and I need it to hold up in court." Franklin raised an eyebrow. "Spouse cheating?" Derek hesitated for a beat. "It's worse. She's planning to take half of what I built, and she's using her lover to do it. He's a lawyer." Franklin nodded slowly. "You came to the right place." They spoke for nearly an hour. Derek gave every detail he could recall, Brad's name, where Linda said she went during the week, odd behaviors, bank transfers, even her new gym schedule. Nate took it all down with methodical precision. "When do you need results?" he asked finally. "Before Monday next week," Derek said coldly. "That's when the lawyer files. Then we'll move fast." Back home that night, Derek waited until Linda was asleep. He quietly unlocked her iPad from the drawer by the bed. She never bothered to change the passcode. It was still Tyler's birthday. He scrolled through the cloud-synced messages and emails, his jaw tightening with every new discovery. Dozens of deleted texts between her and Brad. Encrypted emails with attachments labeled draft separation agreement and asset valuation. One message stood out. "I've started gathering his business financials. He doesn't suspect a thing. You were right. He just wants peace. He'll fold." Derek exhaled slowly through his nose. He forwarded everything to a secured email, then carefully deleted the traces. The betrayal stung like acid, but what burned more was the condescension, this belief that he would break easily, that he would beg. He didn't sleep that night. He lay still in the dark, listening to Linda's slow, even breathing beside him, wondering how many other nights she had pretended, lied, kissed him with calculated detachment. He turned and looked at her silhouette. "You think I'm going to break?" he whispered to the ceiling. "I won't." The next day, he scheduled a meeting with his corporate lawyer under the guise of routine compliance. They reviewed every clause of his operating agreement, tightened ownership language, and restructured shares to make a hostile division legally murky. Then he changed every password to every account she had access to. Next, he bought 2 new prepaid phones, one for business, one for tracking, and paid in cash. He locked them in his safe, untraceable. Then he set up alerts on the company accounts for any transactions over $500. If he tried to move anything again, he'd know instantly. He also set up a burner Dropbox with encrypted backups of every critical file, every communication, every invoice and contract. By Friday, Derek wasn't just prepared. He was armed. He looked at himself in the mirror before heading to work. His face was calm. His eyes were harder than they'd ever been. He thought about Tyler and Maya. He thought about his company, his life's work. He thought about Linda, about Brad, about Robert Ashford and the smug way he sipped that scotch while talking about gutting his son-in-law like a deer. They wanted war. He was going to give them one. But it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise, silent, lethal. He didn't explode. He executed. Chapter 3. Web of Silence. The days passed with a deceptive kind of normalcy. Derek Caldwell still made coffee each morning, still kissed his children goodbye, still told Linda he'd be home late from work because of client meetings. He laughed at the dinner table, asked about Tyler's schoolwork, and even massaged Linda's shoulders while she sat scrolling through her iPad. But underneath the calm facade, Derek was building something far more meticulous than a steel empire. He was building a trap. It started with a meeting in a dim corner booth of an out-of-the-way diner on the edge of town. The waitress poured black coffee into chipped ceramic mugs, and Derek offered a nod to the man across from him. Jake Runnels, an ex-cop with a reputation for results and a face carved out of suspicion. "She's your wife?" Jake asked, flipping through the photos Derek had printed. Linda walking through the Target parking lot, picking up coffee, taking yoga classes. All innocent moments. All time-stamped. Yes. And the man she's meeting with 3 times a week is her divorce attorney. His name is Brad Connors. They went to college together. Jake's eyes didn't blink. "You think they're sleeping together?" "I don't need to think. I know. I just need proof." Jake nodded, snapping the folder closed. "I'll follow her. I'll follow him. If there's a meeting, I'll be there. I'll get pictures, audio, the whole nine. But it's going to take a few weeks." Derek leaned back. "Just make sure it's airtight. I don't want hearsay. I want the kind of evidence that shuts down courtroom arguments." Jake took a sip of coffee. "Understood." They shook hands, and Derek paid cash. The next day, he made a separate call, this time to a contact through Caldwell Steele's legal department, a quiet man named Lorenzo who owed Derek a favor from a contract dispute 2 years prior. "I need someone to look into Robert Ashford's real estate dealings," Derek said over the phone while pacing the far end of the shop floor. Discreetly, "I'm looking for anything shaky, unlicensed permits, labor violations, misused funds. Anything." Lorenzo didn't ask questions. "You'll have it by the end of the month." Derek had always played clean, but the rules had changed. He knew Robert, his father-in-law, owned 3 high-rise developments on the east side of town, all heavily financed, all with narrow margins, all vulnerable. The next move came during a casual lunch with Mason Porter, a mid-level city official who handled zoning requests. Mason owed Derek a favor too. Derek had once helped his nephew get a welding apprenticeship. The 2 men sat in the back patio of a sports bar as Derek casually passed a manila envelope across the table. Mason blinked as he opened it. "These are permit application numbers." "Yes," Derek said calmly. "I need delays, not cancellations. Just enough red tape to slow things down for, let's say, 2 months. I'll owe you one." Mason hesitated. "That's Robert Ashford's project. You sure you want to go after your own father-in-law?" Derek gave him a small, cold smile. He drew the line in the sand. "I'm just choosing the battlefield." Back home, Derek played the part of the devoted husband. He grilled Linda's favorite salmon on Tuesdays, brought her flowers on Fridays, and even booked a couple's massage for their upcoming anniversary. "Trying to butter me up?" she teased with a wink, sipping wine at the kitchen island. Derek chuckled. "Just trying to remind you that I still appreciate you." Inside, he was dead silent. At night, he would lie in bed beside her, her body facing the other way, her screen glowing faintly as she texted clients. Derek would close his eyes, breathing steadily, replaying every piece of intelligence Jake had sent him that week. Photos of Brad's car parked outside their home while Derek was at the office, blurry images of kisses exchanged in her SUV in the grocery store parking lot. He saved everything in an encrypted folder on a USB drive, which he kept hidden inside the hollowed-out bottom of a wrench case in his garage. 3 weeks into the investigation, the first crack in Robert's empire appeared. "Sir," Derek's secretary Claire said, knocking on the door of his private office, "we just got a call from city planning. They're delaying approval on Ashford Tower's east elevator shaft variants." Derek didn't look up from his computer. "Oh, any reason given?" "Some zoning conflict with adjacent property line setbacks." Derek nodded slowly. "That's a shame. I'm sure Robert will be fine." But he knew he wouldn't be. Robert was leveraged heavily on Ashford Tower. Every day of delay meant penalty interest, unhappy investors, and rising costs. 2 days later, another call came, this time from a city safety inspector who randomly visited one of Robert's projects and flagged it for insufficient fire exits. A third project faced scrutiny over unregistered subcontractors. Every time, Derek kept his expression neutral, his tone even. "Unfortunate," he'd say, "but I'm sure it'll sort itself out." He was careful never to tie anything back to himself. Every favor was requested in vague terms. Every communication was verbal and casual. Nothing traceable. Nothing obvious. Confusion spread like a virus across Robert's network. Contractors started pulling out. Investors grew nervous. Deadlines slipped. Meanwhile, Jake continued his quiet hunt. The man was a ghost, tailing Linda without ever being seen. He sent Derek photos of her at a private wine bar with Brad. Video of them entering a hotel at noon and leaving 3 hours later. Audio clips of them laughing, whispering in the elevator. But it was one particular exchange, captured on a grainy recording from a parking garage, that made Derek's blood turn cold. Brad's voice. He has no idea. You'll get half the business, the house, and primary custody. The judge will love you. I've seen these cases 100 times. Linda. He's so predictable. I think he suspects something, but he'd never actually do anything about it. He's soft. Derek listened to that recording 3 times in a row, sitting alone in his truck. He's soft. That word stayed with him, echoing in his head long after he turned off the engine and walked into the house. Linda greeted him at the door with a kiss and a glass of wine. He smiled, kissed her back, and asked about her day. Inside, his silence grew sharper. Outside, his web thickened. Every move he made was measured, invisible. He was no longer trying to win a fight. He was preparing an execution. And no one, not Linda, not Brad, not Robert, suspected the man calmly refilling their wine glasses was the one quietly cutting off their air supply. Chapter 4. The cracks appear. It began with whispers, not in the halls of power or courts of law, but over breakfast, between sips of overpriced coffee and glances at a buzzing phone. Linda sat at the marble kitchen island, her iPad in one hand, a half-eaten croissant on the plate in front of her. Her brow furrowed slightly as she scrolled through her inbox. Derek stood by the fridge, pretending to scan a grocery list tacked to the door, though every word out of her mouth sharpened his internal focus. Strange, she muttered. Derek turned, masking his interest behind a soft smile. What's up? She waved her hand. Just annoying delays. Dad said one of his construction permits got pulled for resubmission. Something about a revised fire code enforcement. Derek's voice was casual. City red tape strikes again. Linda gave a tight smile. Yeah, it's just weird timing. And now Brad's firm is suddenly doing internal reviews. Some anonymous tipster called the ethics board about him, claims of falsified documents. Derek poured himself a cup of coffee and kept his tone even. That's serious. Probably nothing, she said too quickly. Brad says they get jealous lawyers playing dirty all the time. He nodded, sipping slowly. Still, seems like a lot happening at once. She gave him a thin smile, her eyes watching his reaction carefully. Doesn't it? Derek just smiled back, steady as ever. You know how this town is. Rumors spread faster than fires. Inside, though, he knew the blaze had only just started. Over the next 2 weeks, the whispers turned into phone calls. Then long nights. Linda would sit in the study for hours, murmuring heatedly into the phone behind closed doors. Derek never asked questions. He played his role perfectly, coming home with takeout, kissing her on the cheek, asking how her day was, and pretending not to notice the tension in her jaw or the fear in her eyes. At the office, he monitored the collapse from afar. His team quietly fed City, planning new complaints, zoning conflicts, old safety violations resurfaced, outdated architectural blueprints. Nothing illegal, nothing that would directly point to him, but enough to clog Robert Ashford's gears until the machine began to grind. Derek received a report from Lorenzo one morning. Ashford Holdings has lost 2 major investors. Delays on the tower project have triggered penalty clauses. Third site paused for environmental inspection. It was working. He tucked the printed update into the bottom drawer of his office desk and locked it. Later that night, Linda burst into their bedroom with her phone in hand, seething. Dad just lost his contract with Capital Ridge Bank, she snapped. They pulled out completely. Derek, already in bed, glanced up from his book. The big high-rise deal? Yes, the deal. The only reason the Ashford Tower was still afloat. He tilted his head slightly, feigning concern. Did they say why? Just some excuse about financial exposure and construction delays. This all started when that fire code inspector showed up 2 weeks ago. It's like someone's targeting him. Derek set the book down. You think someone's got it out for your dad? She sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing her temple. I don't know, but Brad thinks he's being targeted too. The ethics board called him in today. Now he's worried that the firm might distance themselves to save face. Derek's eyes widened slightly. Wow, that's rough. You two okay? There it was. A flicker of panic in her eyes. She looked up sharply, scanning his face for signs, suspicion, sarcasm, knowing. But Derek gave her nothing. We're fine, she said. It's just a rough week. He reached over and gently squeezed her hand. Tell your dad I hope it settles down. Let me know if I can help. Linda pulled her hand back, gave a tight smile, and stood. Thanks. Derek watched her walk out of the room and exhaled quietly. Her mask was cracking. Brad was sweating. Robert's financial fortress had sprung leaks in every corner. But there was one more piece he needed to move into place. The trap. At Caldwell Steele's headquarters the next morning, Derek met with only one person, Julie Hammond, the company's head of finance, and one of the few employees who had been with him since year one. He closed the office door and lowered his voice. Julie, I need to set up a separate project fund under the main company account. Label it as a joint subcontracting partnership with Holloway Fabricators. The number needs to be clean but flexible. Let's start with 200 grand in the ledger, maybe only 50 actually available. Julie raised an eyebrow. What are we doing? This isn't a real partnership. Derek nodded. It's not. It's bait. Bait. Let's just say I want to know who's paying close attention to our books. If someone borrows from the account, I need to know about it immediately. Can you tag it with alerts? Quietly. Julie hesitated. She'd known Derek a long time. She'd seen him go from welder to CEO. She trusted him, but this was new. I can set it up, she said carefully. But should I be worried? He met her gaze evenly. Not yet. By the end of the week, the bait was in place. The Holloway account sat in the system like low-hanging fruit, barely guarded, well-labeled, just enough funds to be tempting. Derek gave Linda access under the guise of transparency. A small gesture of trust. A digital olive branch. Linda took the bait without knowing it. That night over dinner, she casually asked, What's Holloway Fabricators? You partnering with new suppliers again? Derek sipped his wine and shrugged. Just preliminary talks. Nothing signed. What? No reason, she said too quickly. Derek gave her a warm smile. I'll loop you in if it moves forward. Sure, she said. Her voice was smooth, but her eyes, nervous, calculating. He knew her game. The moment Brad or Robert needed a quick infusion of capital to plug their financial wounds, she would reach into what she thought was his blind spot, and he would be waiting. At night, Derek would sit on the patio alone, watching the stars. The house behind him glowed with lights, Tyler playing a video game, Maya pacing her room on a call, Linda in the office typing furiously. They were living in his world, still believing they had control. He'd given them rope, and soon they'd hang themselves with it. The cracks were no longer invisible. They ran deep through Linda's nerves, Brad's reputation, Robert's finances. And all Derek had done was stay quiet. Chapter 5. The Betrayer's Hand. The line was crossed on a rainy Tuesday morning. Derek sat in his office at Caldwell Steele, staring at his laptop screen, where a real-time bank alert blinked at the top corner. Unauthorized withdrawal. $200,000. Holloway subcontracting account. His hand hovered over the mouse, steady, unreadable. He clicked the notification and opened the transaction record. Linda Caldwell. Internal admin transfer. To an account listed under Ashford Holdings. Derek exhaled, slow and calm, as if watching the final piece of a chess game fall into place. He didn't need emotion. He needed control. Julie buzzed his intercom. Derek? I flagged that transfer from Holloway. It went through just now. You want me to freeze it? No, Derek replied. Let process. But flag everything after it. He ended the call and turned to the screen to play the second half of his trap. The motion-sensitive camera hidden in the executive access hallway had done its job. He cued the video, watching Linda, dressed in her usual pressed blouse and heels, walk confidently into the finance server room. She entered her credentials, accessed the restricted interface, and typed in the authorization code he had planted weeks earlier. Then she clicked Confirm Transfer. He watched her stare at the screen for a second too long after it was done, almost like she felt it. Then she walked out. Derek leaned back in his chair and pressed play on a second file. This one was audio, clipped from a wiretap that Jake had rigged during one of Linda and Brad's now frequent late-night rendezvous at the wine bar on Fulton Street. Brad's voice came through, tight with stress. "I'm telling you, we're bleeding cash. If your dad loses another investor, this whole thing caves in." "Linda, then what do you want me to do?" "Brad, we can use his business. Just enough to float the development until Q3. 200 grand, small and fast. He'll never notice." There it was. Clear. Calculated. Criminal. Derek saved the audio to an encrypted drive and closed his laptop. It was time. Brad Connor's office was in a sleek downtown building filled with glass walls and leather chairs that screamed, "I bill by the hour and smile while I do it." Derek entered the lobby, cool as ever, wearing his usual jeans and blazer. He didn't check in. He didn't wait for permission. He walked straight through the glass door of Suite 1602. A young receptionist popped up. "Sir, excuse me, do you have an appointment?" "I don't," Derek said with a polite smile. "But I guarantee Brad will want to see me." Brad stepped out of his office at that exact moment, his smile faltering the instant he saw Derek. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, voice tight. "This is a surprise." Derek didn't blink. "We need to talk. Privately." Brad glanced nervously at his assistant. "Give us 10, he said, then ushered Derek into his office and shut the door. The air inside was tense, stale with the scent of anxiety and designer cologne. "Is this about the sit down?" Derek said, his voice quiet but steel-edged. Brad hesitated, then sat. Derek reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a USB drive. He set it gently on the desk between them. "I thought you were smarter," Derek said. "But you had to get greedy. You had to get arrogant." Brad's fingers twitched toward the USB, but he didn't pick it up. "What's that?" "Proof," Derek said simply. "Video of Linda stealing $200,000 from my company. Audio of you telling her to do it. Both time-stamped. Traceable. Legal. Fully admissible." Brad's eyes flicked toward the window. A thin sheen of sweat broke across his temple. "I don't know what—" "Stop," Derek snapped, voice sharper now. "You're not in court. You don't get to posture here." Brad swallowed. Derek leaned forward. "You committed conspiracy to commit fraud. Wire fraud, to be exact. You use your relationship with my wife to gain unauthorized access to company funds and move those funds into her father's account. That makes you an accessory to embezzlement. And I have it all documented." Brad's voice cracked slightly. "What? What do you want?" Derek's expression didn't change. "You're going to disappear." Brad blinked. "What?" "You're going to write a full confession, acknowledging your role, clearing me of all wrongdoing, and admitting that Linda acted at your direction under the belief that the funds were a temporary bridge loan that you never intended to repay." Brad shook his head. "I can't do that." You can," Derek interrupted coldly. "Or I go public. You lose your license. You get investigated by the Bar Association. You're disbarred before Christmas." Brad's jaw clenched. "Oh," Derek added, standing up slowly, "and one more thing. I've already filed a complaint with the bar. They're reviewing your activity. When they get this little package," he tapped the USB, "they'll have everything they need to bury you." Brad's breathing quickened. His carefully polished facade crumbled in slow motion. "I have nothing left," he muttered. "Robert's collapsing. Linda's. She's not thinking straight. I was trying to help. You helped yourself," Derek said. "Now you're going to fix it." Brad nodded slowly, defeated. "Fine. I'll draft the confession tonight. I'll send it to you directly." "No," Derek said. "You're going to sit here. Right now. You're going to type every word while I watch. And you're going to sign it." Brad didn't move for a long moment. Then, with trembling hands, he opened his laptop and began to type. It took an hour. When it was done, Derek read the confession line by line, ensuring every word was precise. Then Brad signed it twice. One for legal purposes, one for Derek's personal copy. When it was finished, Derek collected both pages, folded them neatly, and slid them into an envelope. "I never want to hear your name again," he said. "You don't call Linda." You don't call Robert. You don't try to spin this. You vanish. Brad nodded, face pale. Where? Where should I go? Derek walked to the door. Anywhere that doesn't extradite. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't look back. Outside, the air felt colder. Sharper. Cleaner. He dialed one number as he reached his truck. Nate Franklin, the investigator. Brad's done, Derek said. He folded. Full confession. Signed. I need you to courier a copy to the Bar Association Review Board. Attach the USB too. Let them know it came from concerned party. Consider done, Nate replied. Anything else? Derek's eyes narrowed as he started the engine. Not yet. He hung up, gripping the wheel with steady hands. He had played their game. Waited. Endured. Observed. But now? Now the betrayer's hand was exposed. And Derek had it pinned to the table, trembling and useless. Chapter 6. The Collapse. The morning Linda was summoned to Derek's office. She still believed she could salvage something. She walked in wearing a crisp navy blouse and heels that clicked sharply on the polished floors of Caldwell Steele's executive wing. Her makeup was flawless, her hair professionally styled. But underneath the perfect image was a tremor in her step, something Derek noticed the moment she entered. She found him sitting behind his desk, hands folded, face unreadable. Derek, she said, trying to sound casual. Your assistant said you wanted to meet urgently. He gestured to the chair across from him. Yes. Sit. She did, clutching her handbag a little too tightly. Her eyes darted to the folders neatly arranged on his desk. Derek took his time, opened the top folder, slid a single page across to her. It was a legal settlement, simple, direct, and devastating. What is this? She asked. A divorce agreement, Derek replied calmly. Clean break. No alimony. No share of the company. No property disputes. No drawn-out courtroom drama. Linda's jaw tensed. You think I'm going to sign this? He reached for the second folder. Opened it. This one was thicker, full of screenshots, photos, documents, audio transcripts, bank records. He laid a photo on the desk. It was of her inside the finance room, transferring funds. Another followed, her and Brad kissing in a parking garage. Then a third, an email between her and Robert referencing how to safely reallocate Caldwell funds. What is this? She asked again, more quietly this time. Proof, Derek said, of your affair, of your embezzlement, of your role in a conspiracy to defraud a corporation. Linda stood suddenly, voice rising. You spied on me? No, Derek said. I protected myself. You gave me no choice. You can't prove anything, she hissed. Brad has already signed a full confession, Derek said smoothly, sliding over the signed document, clearing himself in exchange for exposing you. Your name is all over this. Every step of the way. She stared at the signature. Her breath caught. He tapped the divorce agreement again. This is your out. You sign, and I don't press charges. You walk away with your freedom, your dignity in tatters, but intact enough to rebuild something. You refuse, and I send this to the district attorney, the Bar Association, and every major business contact your father has left. She sank back into the chair, hands trembling. You do that? To the mother of your children? I'd do it to the woman who tried to destroy me, he replied coldly. You brought Tyler and Maya into a war you didn't understand. You underestimated me. You wanted to gut me like I was dead weight. Now you'll learn what a man looks like when he's done being underestimated. Silence hung in the air. I want my lawyer, she muttered, voice barely audible. You already used him, Derek said. Bad choice. He stood, walking around the desk, placing a pen gently in front of her. This is your last chance, he said quietly. No court, no press, just the truth and a signature. I don't want to destroy you. I want you to live long enough to feel what you did. Every day, Linda looked up at him, eyes hollow, lips parted, shoulders sagging under the weight of her collapse. She signed. Every page, every line. Her hand shook, but the ink dried just the same. When she was done, Derek took the papers and placed them into a new envelope, locking it in the safe behind his desk. We're done here, he said. What happens now? She asked weakly. Now, he said, you face the consequences. Derek didn't call the police. He didn't press formal charges. Instead, he made one very specific call to a contact in financial compliance at the state level. He asked a few polite questions about embezzlement thresholds, mentioned a name or two, left just enough of a breadcrumb trail to trigger internal inquiries. By the next morning, Linda received a formal notice from the Office of Corporate Misconduct requesting a voluntary interview regarding financial irregularities. It wasn't a raid. It wasn't a warrant. But it was enough. Enough to put her on edge. Enough to put her on every watch list. Enough to ensure no reputable firm would hire her again without a mile of red tape. And it didn't stop there. Derek met privately with a judge and his attorney. He presented Linda's signed confession, detailed the emotional impact on the children, shared transcripts of Linda's late-night absences, her erratic behavior, and her attempt to use company funds illegally. By the end of the meeting, he had full custody of Tyler and Maya, granted without contest, based on the evidence and a professional recommendation from a court-appointed therapist who had quietly evaluated the home environment over the prior month. Linda wasn't unfit. She was just exposed. An exposure, in her world, was a death sentence. 2 weeks later, a press conference was held on the steps of the Caldwell Steel headquarters. Derek stood before reporters, flanked by his top executives and legal team. The air buzzed with cameras clicking and microphones pointed toward the podium. Today, he began, his voice calm and steady. I am proud to announce a strategic merger between Caldwell Steel and Ashford Holdings. This partnership will protect both entities, create hundreds of jobs, and ensure the continuation of major infrastructure projects vital to our city's future. One reporter raised a hand. Mr. Caldwell, does this mean you've acquired controlling interest in Ashford Holdings? Derek smiled faintly. Yes. In light of recent financial instability, Mr. Robert Ashford has agreed to transfer 51% of his company to Caldwell Steel. This move ensures financial solvency and provides us with the leadership oversight needed to stabilize long-term operations. Another reporter shouted, will Mr. Ashford remain involved in the company? No, Derek said bluntly. He stepped down from daily operations, effective immediately. He'll remain as a silent partner, but all executive decisions will run through our team. As the press murmured among themselves, Derek stood firm, dressed in charcoal gray and steel blue, like a man forged in fire and now immune to the flames. Behind the scenes, Robert had fought tooth and nail, pleaded, shouted, tried to bluff. But his empire was in shambles. Investor lawsuits were mounting. Half-finished towers sat idle. His name was being dragged through financial watchdog channels. Derek's offer was simple. Sign over control, or drown alone. Robert signed. Derek left the podium that day to thunderous applause, not as a man who had been broken, but as the one who had bent the world around his will. And Linda? She watched the press conference from a therapist's waiting room, her name scrubbed from the headlines, but known to every whisper. No handcuffs, no court date, just her silence, and the weight of everything she'd lost. Chapter 7. Public Disgrace, Private Peace. The public line was that Linda Caldwell had suffered a nervous breakdown. Her family's press liaison released a carefully worded statement to the media. Following recent stress and unforeseen personal difficulties, Linda Caldwell has voluntarily admitted herself into a mental health treatment facility for rest and recovery. No mention of the embezzlement. No mention of adultery. No whisper of her near-criminal involvement in financial misconduct. But the truth had already made its rounds. Within days of the merger announcement, gossip bloomed like wildfire. Employees whispered in the hallways. Social media spun with theories. Former clients of Ashford Holdings cut ties. Private group chats circulated photos of Linda leaving a building in tears, hair messy, face pale. It didn't matter what her family tried to spin. The damage was irreversible. Derek watched it all from a distance. He didn't gloat. He didn't speak to the media. He let Linda's reputation unravel under the weight of its own lies. Quietly, methodically, he began reclaiming the parts of his life she had poisoned. The mansion they once shared was sold within a month. Derek downsized to a modern, modest house on the edge of the city, one with clean lines, natural light, and room for the kids, but not the ghosts. He painted the walls himself. He fixed the creaking floorboards on a Sunday afternoon with Tyler. He built a new life in the silence she left behind. But the kids, they carried bruises that didn't show. Tyler, 10, bounced back faster. He was young, resilient. Sports, video games, and Derek's constant presence kept him grounded. Maya was different. At 14, she had learned to pretend strength before she ever had to earn it. But Derek saw the cracks. Late night, sobbing through paper-thin walls, blank stares during breakfast, the way her grades began to slide. She barely spoke anymore and less spoken to. One afternoon, after picking her up from school, he gently said, "You okay?" She stared out the passenger window, earbuds in. "Fine. You sure?" "I said I'm fine," she snapped. Not cruel, just brittle. Derek gripped the wheel. He didn't push, but he worried. It was Olivia Peterson, Maya's literature teacher, who first reached out. The email came late one Wednesday evening. "Hi, Mr. Caldwell. I hope you don't mind a message. I just wanted to check in. Maya has been withdrawn in class lately, and her recent essay on loss was concerning in tone. I thought you should know. I'm here if either of you need support." Derek stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Things have been hard at home. Would you be willing to meet sometime just to talk about how she's doing in class?" She agreed. They met that Friday afternoon in the school's counseling lounge, neutral territory. Olivia was younger than Derek expected, probably in her early 30s, with curly auburn hair and intelligent green eyes that seemed to see too much. She wore a simple blazer over a floral dress and greeted him with a warm but professional handshake. "I really appreciate you taking the time," he said. "Of course," she replied. Maya is a special kid. Smart, observant, but also caring a lot. Derek nodded. "She doesn't talk much. Not to me. Not since. Everything. She doesn't have to talk to say she's hurting," Olivia said gently. "Kids that age, they absorb the storm long after it's passed." He sighed and leaned back in the chair. "I didn't expect it to hit her this hard." Tyler's bounced back. But Maya, she watched it all unfold. Olivia interrupted softly. "The betrayal. The lies. Her mother's fall. That shakes a girl's entire foundation." Derek ran a hand down his face, weariness creeping in. "I'm trying. God knows I'm trying. But I feel like I'm failing her." Olivia smiled gently. "You're not failing her. You're present. You care. That's half the battle. But she may need space to talk to someone who isn't in the center of it all." "You mean a therapist? Or a mentor? Or a teacher who's willing to listen," she said. "I've been offering extra credit projects. Maya has taken a few. We've had some good conversations. I think she's opening up, slowly." Derek looked at her closely, gratitude flickering behind his eyes. "You didn't have to do that. I know, but I wanted to." He smiled. "That means more than I can say." There was a beat of quiet. Not awkward, just natural. "You're doing a good job, Mr. Caldwell," she said after a moment. "You're rebuilding. That's something." "Please," he chuckled, "call me Derek. I'm sick of being Mr. Caldwell. Makes me feel like I should be running for office or something." Olivia laughed. Fair enough. They parted with a polite goodbye and a mutual understanding that the conversation wasn't over. Not quite. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more often. A school open house, a parent-teacher night, a brief coffee outside the classroom. Every meeting carried that strange comfort, two people with quiet histories, finding small islands of understanding in the sea of chaos. Derek never pushed. Olivia never pried. But one afternoon, after Maya had stayed late to help clean the classroom, Olivia stepped outside and found Derek waiting in his truck. She walked over, coffee in hand. "Waiting on her?" "Yeah," he said. "She said she wanted to help stack books." I didn't have the heart to say no. Olivia glanced back at the classroom window, where Maya laughed softly with two other girls. A rare, genuine laugh. "She's healing," she said. Derek nodded. "Because of you." Olivia looked at him. "Not just me. Mostly you." There was a long pause. Wind rustled through the parking lot. Distant traffic hummed like white noise. "I never thought I'd be a single parent," he said. "Never thought I'd be betrayed like that. I gave her everything. And she She carved me up like I was disposable. Olivia said nothing. I don't know how to let people in anymore, he added. But when I talk to you, it feels easy, and that scares the hell out of me. She placed her coffee cup on the hood of the truck, then met his eyes. You don't have to rush anything. You're allowed to breathe, to rebuild. He let out a slow, shaky breath. I'm just tired of being angry. I want peace. For me. For the kids. Olivia smiled. Then start there. Derek looked up at the sky for a long moment. And for the first time in over a year, the clouds didn't seem so heavy. Chapter 8. Sparks of Renewal. The first time Derek truly opened up to Olivia, it was unexpected. They were sitting in the kitchen of Derek's modest home, halfway between dinner and the chaos of bedtime routines. Tyler was sprawled on the living room floor, headphones on, playing his favorite video game, oblivious to the adult conversation unfolding nearby. Olivia sat across from Derek, her eyes warm but steady, a cup of chamomile tea cradled in her hands. He stared at the steam rising from his own mug, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. Most people think strength is about shouting louder, Derek said quietly, breaking the silence. Olivia tilted her head. What do you think it is? He looked up, searching her face for understanding. It's about control, about knowing when to hold your tongue. Sometimes silence, choosing not to fight back, can hurt more than anger. Olivia nodded thoughtfully. I think that takes a kind of power all its own. Derek smiled faintly. Yeah, I've learned that the hard way. She took a slow sip of her tea. You've been through a lot, Derek, but you're still standing. He leaned back in his chair, the tension easing from his shoulders. I've had to be. For Tyler. For Maya. A quiet moment passed. Then Olivia asked softly, how are they holding up? Derek's gaze softened. Tyler's a sponge. Absorbs everything but bounces back fast. He's learning what loyalty means firsthand. He glanced toward the living room, where Tyler's laughter briefly erupted as he scored point. But Maya, he shook his head, then caught himself. She's still fragile. It's a process. Olivia smiled reassuringly. They're lucky to have you. The room felt lighter somehow, the kind of space where healing begins. Over the coming weeks, Derek found himself looking forward to Olivia's visits. Sometimes they would meet at the school, exchanging quiet hellos. Other times she'd stop by after work and they'd share a meal, simple, unpretentious, talking about everything and nothing. One crisp Saturday afternoon, Derek took Tyler fishing at a nearby lake. They sat side by side on the weathered dock, rods in hand, the water shimmering gold in the late afternoon sun. Tyler, youthful energy barely contained, asked, Dad, how do you know who to trust? Like, when someone lies or hurts you. Derek considered the question carefully, not wanting to oversimplify. Trust, he said slowly, is like steel. It's strong, but it can crack if you bend it too much. Tyler looked puzzled. So you don't trust anyone? No, Derek chuckled softly. It means you build it carefully with people who prove they're worthy, and you don't break it over small things. Tyler smiled, satisfied with the answer. Like you with Maya? Derek's eyes narrowed with fondness. Exactly. He watched his son cast the line out again, feeling a new kind of hope stirring, a spark he hadn't felt in years. Back at home, Olivia and Derek's friendship deepened with every shared conversation. One evening, after dinner, they sat on the back porch, wrapped in blankets against the chill. Olivia shared stories from her own past, moments of loss, challenges she'd overcome. Derek listened, his defenses slowly crumbling. You know, she said, sometimes strength isn't about standing alone. It's about letting someone else stand with you. He looked at her, his voice low. I've been so angry for so long. Sometimes I think the silence was my way of protecting myself. But it was just building walls. Olivia reached over, her hand brushing his lightly. Maybe it's time to take some of those walls down, she suggested. Derek met her gaze, vulnerability flickering there for the first time. Maybe you're right. The next day, Derek met with Tyler in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Listen, kid, Derek began. I want you to know a few things about life, about strength, loyalty, and integrity. Tyler looked up at him, curious. Strength isn't just about muscles or yelling, Derek explained. It's about standing firm when things get tough. It's about protecting the people you love, even when it's hard. Tyler nodded slowly. Loyalty means standing by those who deserve it, but also means knowing when to walk away from those who don't. Like Mom. Tyler's voice was small. Derek sighed, then smiled gently. Sometimes, yes. But loyalty also means forgiving yourself and learning from the pain. Tyler frowned. That sounds hard. It is, Derek admitted. But it's worth it. Finally, Derek looked Tyler in the eye. Integrity means doing the right thing, even when no one's watching. Tyler's face lit up with understanding. Okay, Dad. I think I get it. Derek ruffled his son's hair, feeling a quiet pride swell inside him. Later that evening, Derek sat alone on the couch, reflecting on everything he'd been through. He thought of Linda's betrayal, the slow, grinding destruction she'd wrought. He thought of Brad's confession and Robert's surrender. He thought of the silence he'd chosen, the quiet war he'd waged with patience and strategy. And he realized something. Sometimes silence wasn't weakness. Sometimes it was the most devastating weapon of all. Derek smiled softly, the kind of smile born not from victory, but from wisdom. He was ready now, ready to rebuild, ready to trust again, and ready to let the sparks of renewal catch fire. Chapter 9. Steel Reforged. The morning sun filtered softly through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Caldwell Steel's newly expanded headquarters. Derek Caldwell stood in the sleek corner office overlooking the city skyline, the hum of construction crews echoing faintly from the neighboring lot. The company he had built from scratch was no longer just a regional player. It was a multi-state powerhouse. He sipped his black coffee, savoring the rich bitterness. It was a stark contrast to the bitter memories he had left behind, memories that once threatened to consume him. But today, the past was a faint shadow behind thick walls of steel and resolve. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Derek called. Olivia Peterson stepped inside, carrying a folder and a warm smile. She wore a tailored blazer and jeans, casual yet confident, much like their relationship had become over the past year. "Morning," she said, setting the folder on his desk. "I just came from Maya's school. She's excelling in her literature classes again. The essay she wrote on resilience? Outstanding." Derek smiled, relief washing over him. "That's great to hear. She's come a long way." Olivia's eyes softened. "She's got a good role model at home." Derek chuckled. "I hope so. Tyler's doing well, too. Just yesterday, he pitched me a business idea involving eco-friendly construction materials. The kid's got a mind for it." Olivia laughed. "Sounds like he's already thinking like his dad." They shared a brief look, a comfortable ease born from shared history and mutual support. Suddenly, Derek's phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at the screen, an email from an unknown address. Curious, he opened it. The subject line read, "Please, Derek, let me talk." It was from Linda. His jaw tightened. He hadn't heard from her in months. Not since she'd been forced into the treatment facility and the ensuing legal battles that had left her reputation in ruins. The email was a pleading message, a string of apologies and desperate requests to speak, to see the kids, to make amends. Derek closed the message without replying. "Still no response?" Olivia asked gently. He shook his head. "Some doors should stay closed." Olivia nodded in understanding. "Your focus is here, on what you've built, on the people who matter." Derek looked out the window again, feeling the weight of that truth settle deep in his chest. Later that afternoon, Derek walked through the buzzing factory floor. Machines clanged rhythmically, workers moved with practiced precision, and large steel beams took shape under the skilled hands of his team. The company had grown, more contracts, more employees, more projects, but the culture was still the same. Disciplined, resilient, loyal. He stopped at a workstation where Tyler was inspecting a blueprint with a supervisor. "Dad," Tyler called out, eyes bright. "Look at this. I helped redesign the support beams to reduce waste." Derek grinned and ruffled his son's hair. "I see you're learning the family business fast." Tyler beamed. "It's fun, and I want to make sure we leave the planet better than we found it." Derek's heart swelled with pride. This was the legacy he wanted, not just a business, but values passed down stronger than steel. Nearby, Maya approached with Olivia. Her smile was genuine, her eyes brighter than they'd been in years. "Hey, Dad," Maya said softly. "I finished a project on leadership styles for school. Want to see?" Derek reached out and took her hand gently. "I'd love that." As they walked together toward the conference room, Olivia caught Derek's eye and gave him a small nod, a silent affirmation of how far they'd all come. That evening, after the kids were tucked into bed, Derek and Olivia sat on the back porch of their home, the city lights twinkling in the distance. "It feels good," Olivia said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "The way you've rebuilt everything." Derek exhaled deeply. "I never imagined I could feel this peace again. After everything, after the betrayal, the loss, I thought I was broken." "You were," Olivia replied gently. "But you didn't stay that way. You forged yourself anew." He smiled, squeezing her hand. "You were my spark." She looked up at him with a teasing grin. "And you were my stubborn, determined man." They laughed softly together, the easy warmth between them a balm for old wounds. Derek's phone buzzed quietly on the table. He glanced at it, another email from Linda. He silenced the device without opening it. "Is it getting harder to ignore?" Olivia asked softly. "Sometimes," Derek admitted, "but I remind myself of what I've built here. What we have now, what's worth protecting." She leaned in closer. "You've built something unshakable, Derek. In every way." He nodded, eyes fixed on the stars. "A legacy of steel, reforged from fire." Over the next few days, Derek's inbox quietly filled with Linda's messages, apologies, promises, pleas. He read them once, then archived them unread. His children's laughter and growth filled his home. His company thrived under his careful leadership, and Olivia's steady presence grounded him like nothing else ever had. The enemies who once threatened to dismantle everything had fallen like dominoes, caught in traps they never saw coming. And Derek? He never raised a sword. He didn't have to, because in the end, his silence and strategy were the sharpest blades of all.